Welcome to the Greg Bennett Show. I'm your host, Greg Bennett, and today I'm joined by my co-host, my wife, and multiple Olympian and former world number one, Laura Bennett. And in today's episode, we discuss some of the great episodes and guests of the show from the last 18 months. And then we discuss the evolution of the sport of triathlon, what we've seen change, the athletes, the races, the training, the recovery, and just all the equipment changes that we've seen. Truly a lot of great insights and a bit of fun storytelling throughout this one. Now, before we go on, thank you all so much for listening. We'd love you to support the show. You can do so by just sharing it, or you can support the show's sponsors, Athletic Greens, Hyperice, and Form Swim Goggles. And if you're feeling really generous, you can go to our Patreon page and give as much or as little as you want, and you can stop that whenever you want. I hope you enjoy this as much as we did. It was really fun to have Laura join me, and she's going to be joining me in the future in many of the episodes, hopefully. And we enjoyed sort of doing this show together. So let us know what you think and give us your feedback. Now remember, success comes to those who endure just one moment longer. Do you want to move better? Do you want to reach your full potential? If yes, then you should really consider Hyperice recovery tools. Personally, I use the Hypervolt and the vibrating roller daily. So simple, quick, and easy to look after my body at home. Hyperice is currently running a few sales on both the Normatec line and the Hypervolt with Bluetooth. It's a great time for anyone to take advantage of the discount. Plus, get 10% off all Hyperice products using the exclusive Greg Bennett Show code, GREG21 at checkout. Go to hyperice.com, that's hyperice.com, hyperice.com, and use code GREG21 at checkout. Are you someone who enjoys swimming in the open water? Personally, I love it far more than the pool. The thing, though, that I miss in the open water swimming is the ability to get any feedback. But now with the Form Smart Swim Goggles, I have that covered. Whether I'm in the pool or open water, I can get my feedback. With Form Swim Goggles, you can see all your key metrics while you're swimming. Your distance, pace, stroke rate, and heart rate. This swim data is displayed on the goggle lens, and you can customize the display to see the metrics you want to see. The goggles track it all and are automated. You start them at the beginning of your swim, and you don't have to press any buttons in between. They automatically track everything. The goggles connect to the Form Swim app on your smartphone, and there you can review all the details of your swims. The battery life is incredible, with a 1-hour charge giving you 16 hours of swimming time. So go to formswim.com/Greg, that's formswim.com/Greg, and get $15 off. Or you can use code GREG15 at checkout. I'm using Athletic Greens every day. Great taste, so quick and just ready to go. I've discussed Athletic Greens with several of the guests who are using it daily as well. Melinda Carfrey, Timothy O'Donnell, Tim Don, and Sebastian Kinley. You see, Athletic Greens is more than just a multivitamin and mineral. It's a delicious blend of 75 superfoods, vitamins, minerals, probiotics, greens blend, and more to support your gut health, energy, immunity, and stress. My focus is overall health, longevity, feeling good, and feeling like I'm optimizing each day. And Athletic Greens is there for me to do just that. I've also been doubling down on Athletic Greens vitamin D. A huge portion of the population are vitamin D deficient, including myself. And right now, Athletic Greens will give you a year's supply of vitamin D for free and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Please do yourself a favor and sign up. It also makes a great gift for a family member or friend. So sign up now and get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase by visiting athleticgreens.com/Greg. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Greg. All right, today's episode, I officially bring on my co-host, my wife, and multiple Olympian and former world number one ranked triathlete in the world, Laura Bennett. You see, Laura and I have been together for 21 years this year. For so much of that time, we worked together to just maximize ourselves and our athletic careers. But for all of this time, we've been doing what we can to help each other become better, to just optimize our lives. And you can listen to Laura's episode on, I think it was number 38, when we discussed her journey and her process. But today's episode is an introduction to us as a couple, how we balance the two professional athletic careers, and how we operate now. Laura will be joining the show from time to time as a co-host. A lot of that will be dependent on timing of interviews with guests and how we can work around the kids' naps and sleep schedules. But without further ado, welcome to the Greg Bennett Show. Laura.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg.
Here she is, that beautiful voice just to soften my harsh voice. Well, thank you for joining us down in this basement. We've now created a studio in our basement in Boulder, and I'm pretty blown away by it. What do you think?
I like it. Very professional. Very fun.
Yeah. Well, it's finally I've got you here. Now, you've been listening to the show for, 18 months and listening to me sort of panic because I'm trying to get guests and do all the editing. What have you thought so far?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the show. I'm really impressed with what you've done. Very proud of you.
Any specific episodes stand out to you?
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm a bit of a science geek, so the doctors really appeal to me. You know, Dr. Tommy Wood, Dr. Sapaya, Dr. Maroon, and Dr. Muhammad with the DNA information. So, yeah, but beyond that, you know, you've had so many great sports science guys. And of course, right now in my career, which is non-existent, I can't use a lot of that information, but it's so interesting to think back of when I was racing and all the information that they've got coming out now. I mean, it's not like they're reinventing the book, but maybe it's more information that we didn't have when we were racing. And so it's really interesting to see, you know, maybe where our little pitfalls were and, you know, had these guys been around when we were, or had we had them access to us, we could have had some sharpening in certain areas.
It's true. So, well, I mean, you mentioned those coaches. I mean, quite often I leave an episode after recording an episode with some of these coaches. I'm like, I could really do with him in my corner if I make a comeback.
Yeah, I know. Too bad sport has a age limit or, you know, timeline. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed Joel's and, you know, Dan Plu's. I mean, there's a lot of new information out there that that was new to me, you know, and so it was really, really enjoyable to listen to those guys. But yeah, and then of course, you know, the athletes that we've had so many fabulous triathletes on. Obviously, it's a big group of triathletes that we're targeting, but the new school guys like Christian Blumenfeld and his precision to detail and how much sports science he has behind him as well. And I found that really interesting, the level that they're taking it to. You know, I think Jan kind of did that too, but these young guys are starting out now with a lot of that science. And I think it's really helping their performances a lot. And I love the heartfelt Vincent Lewis and, you know, how he got into the sport and, you know, his dad gave him the option, you know, and he took it and ran and has done so well for himself. I don't know, kind of makes you feel really good about it.
No, they're two great ones. And I think you're right. I think what the Norwegians are doing, Christian Blumenfeld, Gustav Eden, and their coach who I just had on a couple of weeks ago, Arild Svetten, just incredible. The amount of detail and the preparation they're doing is next level. Vincent Lewis, who you mentioned, I didn't know Vincent. And I reached out to him to have him on the show, and he was honored to come on, which was a real like, oh, wow. You know, like this next generation of powerhouse was actually excited to come on the show. And I left that episode going, wow, that was an inspirational conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've enjoyed so many of the shows, GB. I think, you know, having the old school guys that I kind of grew up with is kind of nice to hear from them as well. And, you know, their complete journey, you know, you hear bits and pieces and you've talked to them, but if you haven't targeted exactly what, you know, the information, all their information, then you didn't get to hear as much as when you interviewed them. And so, you know, I'm hearing from Mark Allen and Dave Scott and Macca and Simon. I mean, those guys we were all racing together at the time. And then of course, Siri was through my generation too. And I mean, not to mention all the girls that I actually raced with, you know, the Lorettas and those guys. But I mean, maybe we'll get her on here one day.
Yeah. Well, now that you're here, I'm hoping we can get even more women on. We do have quite a few lined up over the next few weeks though. We have Vicky Holland coming on, who is a bronze medalist in 2016 Olympics. We have Daniela Reef, I believe you've reached out to her, and she wasn't too keen on doing podcasts in 2020, but I believe you've been speaking to her, and she might come on and have a conversation with us. So that'd be fantastic. Ashley Gentle will be coming on the next few weeks. So we really got a star-studded lineup of this next sort of 5 to 6 weeks leading into the Olympic Games. There's quite a few stars coming on. For me, it's been a real privilege to have people like Jan Frodeno and Alistair and Jonathan Brownlee, the real big hitters right now, come on the show. That's been really fun for me as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Paula, she just won in Daytona.
Mm-hmm.
What was that? Almost in March, right?
Mm-hmm.
In March. And so it's good. You're getting the most current guys racing, and I mean, I know the racing isn't tons of it right now, but grabbing those guys and seeing where they're at, and even how they're dealing with the situation that they're in.
I think also, it's been a real thrill for me to even get athletes that aren't triathletes. Our mutual friend Mark Webber. Mm-hmm. That was pretty cool. Finally got him. Poor guy, he was stuck in Australia on COVID restrictions, didn't have a computer, only had his phone. And so the quality of audio of that, he wasn't totally happy with. And, it was just kind of a Zoom call over phones. But we got something down, which was fantastic. And then to have someone like a Nino Schurter, when you and I retired from sport, we took up mountain biking.
Yeah. And then we watched tons of it.
Yeah, we did watch.
Realized from watching it and how unbelievably skilled those guys are, and how their sense of fear, I guess, is not there, or they just shut it down and don't worry about it. Yeah. But it's very impressive, and how much fitness you actually have to have for a lot of that mountain bike. It's amazing. Skills, fitness, everything.
Yeah, I was really nervous for that one with Nino Schurter, because we'd watched so much of the Red Bull TV mountain bike racing, and here's a guy that's a gold medal, silver medal, bronze medal at the Olympics. He's 8-time world champion, or was it 9? I don't know, lost count. And right before we hit recording on that one with Nino Schurter, which was lined up through a friend of ours, he's like, "What am I doing here? What's this about?" And I was like, "Oh." And then we got going, and we just had, it was just fantastic. And I'd like to say I'd call him a friend now, after that hour and a half conversation, which ended with his little daughter coming in Swiss German saying, "Daddy, time for dinner. You've been gone too long," kind of thing. So it was a really nice ending to the show. So yeah, it's been fun to have sort of a mixture of people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I even enjoyed, Dan McPherson from entertainment side of things. And it's, it kind of, everyone that you're having on has kind of fine-tuned their skills and their talents into what they feel that they're best at. And so it's always exciting to kind of hear how they've gotten there and their experiences. And just kind of, you can kind of relate to different language, but it's kind of the same.
No, you're right. Well, I think I'd like to branch out more to the entertainers, because I think their journey and their processes, there's so many similarities between that and sport, in the sense that it requires tremendous preparation. There's they can be going for a role or whatever, and they get shot down, and it's quite tough to take, and it's like losing a race that you've trained really, really hard for a long, long time. And then coming out of character, Dan was fascinating on how he had to ground himself after years of being a certain personality, and having to ground himself. And that's what with athletes, we have to do the same kind of thing. There's a time in the year you got to step away and try and get yourself back to neutral. And it was fantastic listening to Dan and how he's been able to operate at such a high level in the Hollywood and movies and TV and all of that. So
it's got to be stressful.
It's got to be stressful.
It seems like it's all fun and games, but I don't know. I think, there's a lot of money on the line for those guys, and, every performance counts, I'm sure, for them. And, just like sport. But
you'd have to feel pretty confident in yourself, wouldn't you? When you go in and you give your best performance, and then they go, "No, you're rubbish." You're like,
that would kind of hurt.
I mean, he says, "Look, maybe I wasn't tall enough, or didn't have enough muscle, or whatever." And
you definitely have things to talk yourself out of it to kind of keep your ego intact, I'm sure. But I think it's horses for courses. So like if you're perfect for the part, you're perfect for the part, and the producer and director have what they want in mind, and you just go on to the next part.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fantastic. Has there been one episode? Can you pick one that you really, or one person that, okay, you're coming on the show now as a co-host sometime. Is there one person that you would have liked to have been a co-host with that maybe you're a fan of, or?
Oh, let me think. I mean, I do think people commentating sport is so important, and one that I've truly loved over the years is Phil Liggett. So, and then you had him on, and I was like, fantastic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think he's great, and I think he's so down to earth. But it's for right now, so far, yeah, I think Phil's my guy.
I remember before I started this show, I was like, you know what would be really great to have as an introduction and an outroll for this show would be something like the voice of cycling, the voice of endurance sports, more than cycling, because he's done triathlon and the Olympics and everything else. I was like, why not just reach out to him? I knew we were friends on Twitter or LinkedIn or something. And I wrote him and said, would you do it? And he wrote straight back, like almost that afternoon. And I remember getting like, I think I yelled out to him, Laura, yeah. Phil Liggett said he would do the intro and outro. And here he was in his place in Africa, and he still made it happen. And then he said he'd come on for a chat, and I think we will have him back though, because he's one of the world's great storytellers.
That's what I loved about it.
Yeah. And I think we scratched the surface on some of his stories, but I think we could definitely go even deeper. And I believe there's a documentary that's just come out about Phil Liggett in Australia, and you have to forgive me, I'll put it in the show notes, whatever it is, but it's just came out in Australia where they documented his life and his journey. So that's another thing.
That'll be brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I think his true gift is, storytelling. He even mentions it in the podcast with you, saying he just sees the color. He just starts talking. He sees it. And then all of a sudden he's commentating, like just hanging out with friends, like driving in the car or something. So yeah, I think it's a true gift, but he definitely exploited it. And I'm so happy he's so successful in what he's done.
I actually would love to be to commentate with him. I think that would be a bit of a career highlight too.
Brilliant.
Yeah. All right. Well,
get that gig.
I think we've pretty much rehashed nearly every episode we've done over this last 18 months. Maybe let's just move on and shift gear a little bit and talk about quickly just how we met, so people have an understanding of our background. So you start.
Okay.
You hunted me down.
Yeah, right. Well, when I first got into the sport, I tried to figure out where the best athletes in the world were, and I figured out that it was Australia. So they had this racing when I in '98, I believe, and it was down in, so we'd follow summer. So Australia kicked it off from January to April, and then the rest of the world started up in April, and you travel the world. So I figured out going down to Oz was the place to be, and that's where we met the first time in 1998. And we had different friends and everything, so we didn't really connect more than just a hi, I'm Greg, hi, I'm Laura. But I did think you're pretty all right. So in that short introduction or whatever. So racing on the Aussie circuit, where the best in the world came down to race, because that's where the racing was in the off season. And we started off there.
Yeah. And then it was really, I remember I was training, Brett Sutton was my coach. And I remember Brett saying to me, and to me and to Loretta Harrop, can you guys reach out to Laura Reback, which is your family name at the time, and have her come in join the squad. And so we did. We sent you an email, which back then was the dial-up type email, where you'd take your remember those little things, and you plug them into the little phone dial-up thing.
The little world travelers had that.
And basically we emailed you, but you said you never heard back.
Never received that email. So I don't know what you emailed, but I didn't receive it. So yeah, I know. I mean, I don't know, had I gotten that, maybe this whole future would have been completely different. Yeah. Who knows?
Well, it was only 18 months, 2 years later, you turned up into Victoria, Canada, and I'd been there training with my good friend Simon Whitfield, and the Canadians brought you up to train with Canadian triathlete Sharon Donnelly, who was going to the 2000 Olympic Games, and she needed a training partner. You turned up, and we basically hit it off. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a long story, and we really didn't date. We were together, and boom, that was it.
Maybe 2 years later, we went on a date. It was like, well, we've never done this before. So it's kind of wild, but I guess that's part of sport. You're basically living on the road and living with different athletes, and so you didn't think twice about it. But that first year of living together definitely felt like the first year of marriage.
It did. There was a few obstacles and figuring it out how to make it work. But
when you want it to work, then it is a lot harder.
But let's shift gear again. So that's how we met. The Olympics coming up. We're recording this early May. Right now, they're obviously postponed from 2020, the Tokyo Olympic Games. Right now, they're still on, as far as I'm aware, for 2021. We're not that far away. July 23rd, they start. Let's talk a bit about, let me ask you a question and tell me about what the Olympics meant to you and what it's like to qualify and the experiences that you had both the times that you went.
Well, it's definitely an amazing experience. And I think when you're doing the short course racing, that was kind of the pinnacle of our sport during our generations of racing. And so you definitely wanted to check that box. But having the opportunity, I tried to make it in 2000 and 2004 and, just missed out. So, before I left the sport, I definitely wanted to have that experience. And so at first you're kind of thinking, okay, well, maybe it's not everything. But at the same time, you're thinking, okay, I definitely want to make the Olympics and have that experience. And that was the thing. It's another experience in our sport. The day of the race, it's the same girls that you're always racing. It's, the course, because you've been training or racing on it, the years before. But I think having the crowd and the energy around one race made it just so much more exciting and fulfilling to some degree. And I mean, not that it's everything, but it was definitely, I don't know. I kind of look at life as having as many experiences as you can. And I think that was one of them that I really, really enjoyed, and in the sport that I'd given so much of my life to. So it was pretty exciting. And 08 and 12 were completely different experiences. 08 was more of the first time of going to the village and experiencing everything the Olympics had to offer. And then 2012, the race, the energy around that race was amazing. Beijing had a little bit, the crowds were kind of spread out a little bit more, so you didn't have that level of energy. But in London, it was just electrifying. You couldn't even hear yourself breathing when you went through those crowds. So just that kind of energy and that kind of excitement around a race and a sport that you have loved for so long and really enjoyed and given your whole life to it was really, really fun.
I think it's, if I was to surmise your 08 and 12, it was kind of like 08 was the full Olympic experience.
Yes.
Whereas 2012 was the specific triathlon race experience, like with the crowds and the energy around that specific race. Whereas I felt like 08, you had good friend Julie
Swale.
Julie Swale on your team, and
Her
you
team.
guys were like just buddies that wanted to take in every experience at the Olympic. There's a great huge photo of the American team that are walking into the stadium on opening ceremony, and there's you and Julie front and center. She dragged you to the front, and it's just a great image.
She knew what she was doing.
Yeah, but it was like that to me is what Beijing was for you. It was that full,
exactly.
all encompassing.
I mean, what's the Olympics to you? I mean, you've done so much in the sport with all the non-drafting success you've had. And I mean, of course you started, in the Olympic distance towards the Olympics and maximized yourself there. But
a bit like you said, it was kind of like you didn't want to leave the sport, even if you'd been ranked number one in the world or whatever, and you hadn't ticked that Olympic box. It was kind of like you needed to have that. A quick mini break. I really want to encourage you to do something special for yourself and sign up for Athletic Greens and get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase by visiting athleticgreens.com/Greg. Again, that's athleticgreens.com untitled.com/Greg. If you want to see all your key metrics like your pace, distance, stroke rate, and heart rate while you're swimming, you need the Form Smart Swim goggles. Go to formswim.com/Greg. That's formswim.com/Greg and get $15 off. Or you can use code GREG15 at checkout. Take advantage of the great sale going on now at Hyperice. Plus get 10% off all Hyperice products using the exclusive Greg Bennett Show discount code GREG21 at checkout. Go to hyperice.com and use code GREG21. I think after the 2000 experience for me, I was pretty devastated. I felt like I'd made the team, and a couple of weeks later I found out I wasn't, and it was all a bit of a court case, and it was a bit ugly. And there's more I could have done, definitely, looking back, that I could have done better in 2000. But that one hurt a lot because that was a hometown Olympics. As a crow flies, grew up 2 miles from the Sydney Opera House stairs. I'd won on the course the year before and come third 3 times a year before that. It was a course that suited me, and I was ranked number 2 in the world, and so it was very difficult to swallow. But then I remember just thinking, well, next time around, I'm not going to let any selectors or anybody have anything to do with it. I have to do it myself. Just.
It's the only way
and
to go.
So I went about, having, you and I were now together, and that was a big thing post 2000 Olympics. You and I got together, right before the Olympics actually, but we grew as a team, and I think you helped me manage a lot of the emotions that I struggled with in sport, which helped me find neutral, which was what I needed. So then, 02 and 03, I went on to win, the World Series back to back, started winning more. I was on the podium more, having that world number 1 ranking going into 2004 was nice. But then I pulled up a bit injured. The Australian team put the selection in sort of end of December and start of February with the 2 trial races. I was like, I've been racing internationally.
It's so hard to change up your year cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, I was so disappointed.
Always in August, and then trying to peak in December, January's.
Yeah, it was brutal. It was really hard. I was tired. Natural. I remember saying to you before flying to the second selection race, because the first one I didn't do well in at all. It was terrible. But good mate Simon Thompson qualified, and so there was still 2 spots left. And so I went to Perth, and I told you before we went to Perth, a couple of days before, I said, Laura, don't even come. Don't bother jumping on the plane. Cancel your flight. And I think we even had nachos and beer.
Yes, we did.
And it was a couple of beers.
Not taking this seriously. Forget it.
I'd basically given up. I felt like, you know what? I'm going to be world number 1. I was world number 2 last time I missed out, and this time I'm going to be world number 1 and missed out, so don't even come. And then when I was going over to the race, I thought, look, I know the third spot, the selectors are basically going to choose somebody that they think, could either work well with the team or could medal on their own. Why don't I show that I can bike really well, and maybe they'll put me on the team as a domestic for, Simon Thompson or whoever's on the team. So I charged away on the swim and the bike and got myself a gap. Long story short, I did qualify. And I didn't realize how much it meant to me until I sat down at the finish. I was absolutely exhausted. And this is, you got to take it with a grain of salt. I was really tired, everybody. and they shoved the camera crew in front of me. And I was sitting there just exhausted. And I think, I can't remember who interviewed me, but they said, you're going to the Olympics. How does it feel? And then.
Was that a tear?
Yeah. Well,
was it a sob or was it a cry? I don't know.
Well, I would have said it was a bit of a tear. The media came out the next day saying this is quote unquote, he cried like a baby. I was like,
that's a bit rough.
It really was a bit harsh. But yeah,
a lot of emotion goes into all of that.
But I was overjoyed to qualify for the Olympic Games. But again, I ended up a bit injured after that race, pulled my Achilles, really did some damage to it. Didn't run for months and months, kept it hidden from everybody.
Yeah.
And then about 8 weeks out from Athens, started to be able to run again. And honestly, and I've talked about it on this show a lot, my confidence, I went to that race in Athens just hoping not to embarrass myself, and that was a pretty poor mindset, right? I mean, I've been dealing with injuries and everything else, but I just didn't want to embarrass myself. a couple of things happened in the race where I think had I been a more aggressive racer and had I won more in my career, I could have taken advantage of. And in the end, came fourth by 8 seconds. And what's crazy, you went to Beijing, came fourth by 6 seconds. So we both have fourths, but you are the better athlete for only being 6 seconds behind third.
Thank you. I know, it all adds up. Yeah. It's amazing you can come down to just 6 to 8 seconds in a 2-hour race and 25 years of training. But it does.
Well, it's like you described swimming, though, is even worse. It's like,
yeah, you're awesome. You are not awesome.
You suck. Yeah. I know. I mean, what about, what do you think was missing? I mentioned that.
Us. I think,
I'm talking about missing for our wins, I guess. Not winning. We both came fourth, yeah.
Oh, for that day. I mean, you can break down the races and know the players. And I mean, I really feel, for me, I feel like you have, I went to 08 and I went to 12, but I really feel like 8 was my peak in my career. However, who knows, maybe I could have done 12 if I'd done it a little differently. But I think that, the players that are, it's funny, you kind of look at the World Series and the racing leading up to the Olympics. And if you look back, because I have done this before, you see the players that are constantly on the podium. And generally those are the ones that are, of course, vying for the gold medal at the day of the games. And so what they're made of. I mean, you and I didn't leave any stone unturned as much as, for what we believed of how to get the job done, And so I don't know, if we often even thought about bringing a coach in to kind of help manage us, because you can do so much as athletes on your own. But when it gets down to the nitty gritty, like that's last 6 weeks of training and you start to get really tired and you're not you're kind of helping each other out, but you're also managing each other's emotions and you're managing, their training, because we're always talking about everything. And so it can be quite overwhelming. You don't have the opportunity to just focus on yourself. And I think with having a personal coach on the line, there's management in that because they need to be involved. Whereas that's where we had together, we could just, we knew how each other were feeling all the time because we were together all the time. And you're not going to have that in a coach. So I don't know, honestly, I feel like what we were missing for more wins. I mean, you kind of dialed yourself in a little bit later, but I'm not sure if you dialed it in because you went to non-drafting and that's where you're more suited. Or, you had plenty of wins in the World Cup series as well, but it didn't suit your talents as much as the non-drafting. So
no, I think you're right. I think my talents were the non-drafting Olympic distance, and when they made the ITU draft legal, that wasn't ideal. But we all had to change and adapt quickly. Exactly. And
those that did were successful for longer, for sure.
So here's a question for you. You mentioned, you can always look at the form guide coming in. Okay, this Olympics, we haven't seen anybody race really much for 18 months. I mean, we had Hamburg, they turned into a last-minute world championship last year, but it was a sprint distance, and that does change the dynamics a fair bit.
Definitely changes the dynamics.
It's who do we pick? I mean, it's like we haven't seen a lot of racing.
You almost have to wait until people start racing, if there's going to be any racing before the Olympics. If there's not, honestly, doing research and trying to figure out who the players are is going to be really difficult.
Yeah, well,
I mean, you have a lot of the different types of racing happening on a treadmill and inside a velodrome and all of that.
We've had Macca's Super League, we've had some half distances, and we have had some ITU stuff. Actually, when this episode comes out, it'll be the Yokohama World Series would have just been on this past weekend. So it's kind of, okay. You and I are talking without knowing the results of what's happening in Yokohama, but that should give us a good indicator of who's starting to I
can't even imagine the mindset of the athletes in this period of time with all the uncertainty and how you can train as hard as you need to be training to get ready for an Olympics and not even knowing if they're going through. I mean, you're always on the edge when you're trying to push yourself, and to have that intensity stay there and not knowing when the deadline is. I mean, they already pushed the Olympics back a year. So, they were trying to get ready for the last one And like we said, they changed your trials one time to December, January. I mean, that really kind of screwed everybody up. Imagine another extra year. I mean, some people it worked out well. They were injured and they're like, sweet.
Yeah, or they were coming up, they were young. For the youngsters, it's kind of going, okay, I can have one more year of development. For the Javier Gomez, Alistair Brownlees, it's kind of like getting a bit older, still incredible, but they're like, I got to hang on for one more year. Yeah. What was interesting when I had Jake Birtwistle on a couple of weeks ago, so Australia's great hope for the gold medal and really is one of the favourites. And if it comes down to a sprint, nobody's beating him. He said, and when I asked him that kind of motivation, where does it come from? He said, while there's a 1% chance of the Olympics going on, I'm training 100%.
Nice.
It's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah. And he said, look, that doesn't mean there hasn't been moments if it's been tougher to get out the door, but he's, these guys are totally inspired. Yeah. And it is incredible to just, And
they are doing what they love to do. And if they can afford to keep going without, I mean, I think the sponsors have been pretty amazing.
From what I've heard
through this period of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, maybe it's considered an essential job.
Well, I think from what I've heard with a lot of the sponsorships, because I have asked, not so much on the show, but maybe post-recording, how you're doing. And for the most part, I think our sport and the loyal partners, the sponsors that these athletes have around the world, whether they're European, Australian, American, whatever, the companies that have stuck by the athletes is really pretty fantastic.
Pretty
and there might have been a little bit of a cut, a little bit of a pay cut, but nothing, they've all been able to still work even though they're not racing. So I think that was pretty cool.
No, that's pretty great.
Yeah. Now let's change gear a bit. That's our Olympic spill, everybody. We both, spent much of our lives focusing on qualifying and experiencing their games. Had many, many disappointments along the way and some great joys in that. But let's chat a bit more about triathlon in general. And we've mentioned quite a few athletes, but let's talk about, you've both been in the sport since the mid-'80s. You started really young. What do you think of the athletes? If I said to you, greatest athlete of all time, is it easy for you to narrow that down?
Honestly, that's such a hard thing to determine. I mean, you've done this whole spreadsheet that kind of breaks it all down, which I think is hilarious.
Yes, I like my spreadsheets.
Yes. So maybe we can bring that out for everyone and we can really have an analysis of, what the athletes are on paper and the numbers and how attributing numbers to what they've done. But I think that, it's really hard. One example of why it's very difficult to kind of compare athletes that aren't racing in the same generation is that I think athletes at this level are going to adapt to whatever type of racing they need to in order to be successful. So for example, when after 2004, there was a huge swim pack of Loretta Harrop, Nikki Hackett, Barb Lindquist, Sheila Taramina.
And yourself.
and myself hanging on for dear life. And so it was really much about swim bike combination, and then the best runner of that group wins. And once those guys retired in 2004, the bottom dropped out for swim bike, groups, proper group, and it became a running race. And so all of a sudden the runs, and granted in that period of time, often the run win would be around a 35 or 36 minute 10K out of that swim group that was off the front. You would have the random athlete come from behind, like Siri Lindley. She made the swim pack, and she could run at that time, that 33, 34 minute 10K. So she would definitely smash the quote unquote swim bikers. But once that group went away, now there was a ton of runners that are now in the race because there's no swim bike group, driving away from the group. And so that's where everybody's run times now started to drop, and the running got so fast.
That's where you had Fernandez and Emma Snowsill come on board. Yeah,
those guys were the next group of proper fast runners. Running that 33 to 34 minute 10K
or quicker. I think even sub 33. I think a couple of times. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And granted, the swim bike wasn't as hard. And
well, that's what you're saying. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. You take out yourself and the 4 other women you mentioned, and the swim's not as quick. And so, everything slows down at the front.
Yeah.
So the back
so
end
you
of the
have
race.
more energy for the run. So it is kind of all a balancing act. And so that it makes it a little difficult to kind of say, let's say, or going back to like Karen Smyers and McKeely Jones and those guys way back, I'm not exactly sure how they're racing. I didn't get to race. Well, Karen, I didn't. McKeely, I did a little bit, towards the end of her career. And, I think it was a little bit more of non-drafting back then.
Yeah.
So that's a completely different race. So comparing that and comparing to draft legal.
Actually, Karen Smyers won the first ever draft legal race.
In Manchester.
No, in Cancun.
Oh, that's right.
In Cancun, and she did that only 5 weeks after winning Kona Ironman.
I know. She was the first to do the double, right?
She did the double, but not only was it the double, it was the first time they went to draft legal. And so we were all trying to go, from this non-drafting style of racing, and 95 it was. And we got to have Karen on the show together because I think, we both really admire and respect Karen, and it'd be great to have her on.
Absolutely.
But this is why I have the spreadsheet.
Exactly.
See,
got to put numbers to it.
Because it's one thing to talk about so-and-so has so many titles. Okay, great. How are they getting those titles does matter to me, right? On my spreadsheet. I want to know that you can swim, you can bike, and you run, and I weight them evenly. So I think they each get 15% each or whatever, 15% to swimming, biking, and running. And so that's 45% of your total goes to how well you do each individual discipline, right? Then I break it down into going, okay, how many titles do you have? Because titles are what matter. Your world titles.
You can show up on the big day.
And so how many world titles you got? I think I can't remember, don't quote me, but I think it's about 20% goes straight to world titles. Then we have small percentages like for longevity, people that have been in the sport, once you're on top for 10 plus years, now you're getting 5% out of 5%. Then we have the ability to, maybe it's 5 or 10%, for the ability to cross from, super sprint style racing, super league type stuff, to ITU, to non-drafting Olympic, to, the whole way through to Ironman. Someone like Christian Blumenfeld doing a fantastic job at that right now, doing sort of very well in the Super League, doing well at the 70.3s. And he's on track to try and break the 7 hours or whatever for the Ironman. Him and Alistair Brownlee doing Chris McCormack's thing that he's got lined up. Yes. So anyway, my point is with all of that, the spreadsheet works, people. It may lean in favor to whatever works to my strengths. I'm not going to lie, but I'm still only ranked about 15th on that spreadsheet list. So I'm not I could have ranked it more to Olympic distance, non-drafting, blah, blah, but I didn't.
You are trying to be fair, right?
I am trying to be fair, but I have upset people with it when I have mentioned it on this show, because I've got a lot of good mates in the top 10, including Simon Whitfield, Chris McCormack, Craig Alexander, and they all want to be outdoing each other. So that's a bit of fun.
The competition never dies, honestly. Especially
between us guys. But I mean, you mentioned so many great names there. McKeely Jones, Karen Smyers. We forget people like Erin Baker, who not only was she able to win major races, Ironmans and everything else, but she was a real advocate for equality for women's sport. And she was I think she was the first to say, I'm not turning up unless you pay equal money.
Nice.
So she's fascinating in her own right.
I like that. I know a lot of people argue about that sort of thing, but you got to open that door in order to incentivize women to get more involved and know that they can do it. I'm all for making it fair for both, because I do think there's a lot of guys, a lot of time on the starting line over minimal amount of girls, and getting paid the same can be tough for the guys to swallow, and, feeling it's, quote unquote, not fair. But I think sometimes we all have to give a little to gain more in the long run.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, it's still, if you're doing well in the sport, you're doing well.
Oh, that's what I was saying to you this morning. There's still plenty of races around.
Plenty.
And if you're good, you can be a professional athlete and have a decent income.
And yes, you are going to have to dedicate your whole life to it. And yes, you are going to have to reinvest in yourself. That's what we did. But if you plan it out and you say, okay, 10% of my income is coming back to making sure I'm taking care of my body. I mean, you train so hard, and then, we've seen athletes in the past where train so hard and then they'll race go to a race and not invest in themselves in the sense of racing or flying economy. So you're
flying economy and staying in a homestay 10 miles from the race or whatever.
Yeah. It's like do one race and do it right the year. Don't do 10 races and do it that way. I guarantee you start backing yourself that way and you will find success. And okay, maybe you do have to have a little bit of a side job happening in your build up.
Maybe. Yeah.
But it is worth it because one day you're going to have that locked in and you'll be able to, it's almost like a exponentiated curve. You all of a sudden accelerate and you're like, wow, I've been fighting for 7 years. And then all of a sudden I'm killing it and I'm here.
And then everybody's like, when are you retiring? Yeah. You're like, I just got here.
Come on, give me a chance.
It was funny you mentioned that Andrew Starkovich came up to me and challenged Miami a few weeks ago. And he said, Greg, do you remember you said to me, it's better to do one race really well and win it than do 5 races average. And I said, well, I actually don't remember saying that, but but it is exactly what you just said. It's that, prepare yourself, do it right, and turn up and deliver the goods. And it's amazing how much, not only will you get rewarded, of course, with prize money and maybe some endorsements, but your mindset, the ability to know that I can win when it matters, Exactly.
And I think having that's where you build a lot of confidence when you back yourself and then it plays out for you and you say, okay, yeah, it does pay off to have that focus and that understanding that it's not about scrambling. It's about proper planning, smart training, not overtraining, not, killing yourself and just saying hard work, but kind of figuring out your strengths and weaknesses and maximizing both of those to the utmost you can. And it does work.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of moved off topic there, but it's great. I love all of that because I think we were kind of still talking about athletes and greatest of all time, and there's just so many. I kind of break it down these days in my mind. I don't know how this works, but there's kind of an old school greatest of all time. Then there's kind of a current school greatest, and then there's this new generation coming up that we've mentioned, and Cassandra Bogrant, Jake Birtwistle, Beth Potter. Did you see her run that 5K other day? 14:41.
That's insane.
I mean, Beth is a woman's name. Everybody, if you haven't heard of it, that's not a man's time. That is a woman's. That's absolutely insane. This young and Jake Birtwistle, his times, he could be one of Australia's great runners, like a Mottram and all of those that we had, De Castella. Jake Birtwistle, if he wanted, could have that, but he's chosen triathlon.
It's pretty amazing.
That's so cool to see our sport getting this unbelievable raw talent choosing it. I mean, Lucy Charles Barclay, could have just focused on the swimming, just swam a 16:41 1500. I don't believe the 1500 though is a women's Olympic distance.
I thought it was only 800.
I thought it was the 800 as well.
1500.
Unless they've changed it, I don't know.
Maybe at one time or...
Yeah, I don't know. But I saw that the other day and I was like, oh, is that I didn't know if that was. Yeah. How about the races? How about have they changed? You started in the mid-'80s. What do you think have been some of the big differences you've seen, from then to now? I mean, that's 35 years.
Well, exactly.
We're aging ourselves.
I think the publicity was a little bit better way back then for the non-drafting racing. We're talking about different types of racing here. So you've got the non-drafting, U.S. non-drafting. So you would have had the Bud Light series. And we can talk to Karen Smyers about that because I'm pretty sure that was her and McKeely, their main, racing back then before ITU started the World Cup series. Even though that's been going since the 1990. So
1989 was the first
1989,
one.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe that kind of morphed into each other. But yeah, so you have, the different groups. And then, of course, the World Cup Series goes into the Olympics. And then you've got the Grand Prix, which we did down in Australia. And I think, having that is why the Australians were so amazing for so long. You guys were racing all year round. And that's why the world came down to be a part of it. You would want, when I got into the sport after swimming in college, I thought, well, if I'm going to try and be the best in the world, where are the best in the world? And Australia was it at the time. And so that's where you go. A lot of Americans wouldn't travel back then and they didn't want to, leave their soil to kind of race all year round.
Get uncomfortable.
Get uncomfortable. Exactly. Yeah. But I don't know, in my perspective, if you're doing this, let's do it. go all in. And so that kind of racing was happening. And what's amazing is Mac has now pulled that back around. We did lose that Grand Prix racing in basically, I think it was after 2004 Olympics. Australia stopped doing it. I think, the federation got involved with the Olympic movement. And so they wanted to control the Formula One racing. And that was the worst part about it. The Bray brothers had started that Formula One, and it was their own enterprise to make money, and we all profited from it.
I think, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to touch on that because Deli Carr, who I had on the show last week, we were just talking about, and that how so many of us have to thank the Bray brothers and Andrew Fraser, who was their sidekick and awesome guys. Just they went out on a limb and chose triathlon, and they just made something. They just created a platform for us all to learn our craft. And we raced, like you said, 5 to 7 times, 5 to 7 events in a summer in Australia, but each event had 3 races. So by the time you're coming out of Australia,
you were so fit.
You're 15 to 20 races in, plus if you're doing any national series races, and then you go hit the world stage. Yeah. The world couldn't keep up. We left Australian shores, and I remember getting off the bike in some of the races like Ishigaki and Gamagori, Japan, and even the early European races. And it was basically whoever had done the Grand Prix were top 10. Absolutely. And you were all sprinting together off the bike and the rest of the world were behind. But it was that kind of racing. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, and you were peaking in August, if not sooner.
Yeah, usually it was hard to hold a peak. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, once the ITU or once Formula One ended in 2004, which really made a huge difference, a real void in the Australian athletes for some part. The bringing up the crop from the below. Like you said, you were racing those guys. Yeah. You could race Greg Welsh
every weekend,
Brad Bevan every weekend as a young guy, and basically you could. And it was amazing how that experience kind of takes away the awe of those athletes.
Exactly.
It makes you feel not necessarily like you can absolutely beat them or you're better than them, but it kind of takes away the fear that you could ever be that good. And so I think that was a real benefit.
You humanize them.
Yeah, humanize them, exactly. And that was a real benefit for the Australian athletes. And that kind of dropped out in 2004. But, when there's a void, somebody always picks it up. And that's when the French started their...
The French Grand Prix.
Maybe they had that always going, but you didn't really know about it as much until the Australian series dropped out. Because most of the French guys would come down to the Australian
a lot of the Europeans came down,
Yeah, so I think that, now the Europeans are doing amazingly, and I think that's all kind of part of it and what made it grow.
They've definitely got the races, don't they? If you think about it, in Europe they have the French Grand Prix. I know Chris McCormack puts on a few super leagues in Europe.
Yeah.
And then the ITU World Series really moved over to Europe a lot this last 10 years, in 15 years.
It did.
I remember you were still racing. I was focused more on the US non-drafting racing. And
I needed to.
For you should have been in Europe, but you wanted to keep a marriage with me together, so you stayed here and gave up half of your career, which I'm incredibly grateful for. But it really did become a very heavily European-focused series, and they got to go where the money goes. I mean, the ITU,
absolutely.
When Stockholm are saying, "Hey, we'll put up money," and Leeds, we put up money, and Madrid, and
and they're putting on fantastic
and they
events
do
over
amazing races. But,
ITU racing,
but you have to move there. I mean, if you're doing ITU and you want to go to the Olympics, get your butt and move over to Europe. And yes, come back and do Montreal and Edmonton or whatever we have in North America here. But there's very little in Australia in terms of the World Series. You get Yokohama now, 1. We used to get 2. You used to get Ishigaki, Gamagori, plus Tokyo. We used to get quite a few. So as an Australian, we always had sort of Sydney, Mooloolaba, Ishigaki, Gamagori, Tokyo. You could do those 5 or 6.
Absolutely. And that's right off of the Formula One series. Go straight up to Japan.
Yeah.
And then we head across to Europe.
And all of a sudden you're ranked in the top 1 or 2 or 3 in the world. So now you're getting the better start positions by the time you get to Europe. I know, but now it has been a bit heavier weighted to Europe. But again, I don't begrudge ITU. You got to go where the dollars go. And and if I was USA or Australian, sport director, that's where my funding would be going. Okay, I need to take my best and I need to take them overseas to race and race. Not training camps, race.
Absolutely.
Just, you know, it's one thing we keep training.
You learn so much more. You learn so much more when you're racing.
Especially young. I mean, we did mention, you know, only race when you're ready, only 5 minutes ago. But my point is, when you're young, in your late teens, early 20s, mid-20s, get out there and race, learn your craft.
Yeah. I mean, we can go into a whole build of an athlete on another recording. But yes, for sure. There's, you know, like you've spoken about in the past, 4 block increments with coaches to learn. I mean, ideally, you are your best coach. And that's exactly our perspective when we started coaching ourselves. But if you haven't had enough experiences, then that's what other coaches taking you through certain programs are trying to teach you, what your limitations are and how to deal with all of those things. And so I think if you don't know those things, then yes, coaching, you know, blocks like that, and then types of way to race, you know, more racing or more training into certain, you know, planned out races. So yeah, I mean, again,
I think you're on a really good topic there, though. It's Sarah True who just came out on the show. We were discussing that, and Sarah's probably had 4 of the greatest coaches on the planet, and they worked out well in terms of where she was. So she started with Siri Lindley, great motivator, tremendous passion, right? I mean, absolutely. And I'm a big believer in passion is the fuel of greatness. It's like you got to have the passion, and you got to have it there for those down, dark times, you know.
Absolutely.
And so I'm a big believer in that under 20s or that youth generation to have passionate coaches to fuel you and educate you on the sport. Then she moved over to Darren Smith and his squad. Fantastic squad of athletes. I don't believe Darren's coaching anymore. Australian coach. Did very, very well on the World Series circuit for a long time.
Yeah, can I interrupt you real quick on that?
Of course.
Yeah, Darren's definitely, when I was speaking about the 2004 dropout where there was no swim bikers anymore, and there was his group, actually, they came more like 08, 09, you know, 10. But essentially, they brought back a bike group in Lisa Norden and Daniela Riff.
That's right.
And all of a sudden, the little group that might have been getting away on the swim was now being tracked down.
So Daniela Riff was with Darren Smith too, was she?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She and Lisa Norden led the way.
They just crushed the bike.
Probably a couple more that I'm not really remembering at the moment, but those two I remember.
No, in Sarah True's part, she mentions all the names. And Annie Hug was in there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about Darren Smith, who he had, and now the athletes who are dominating the world.
Yeah.
It's actually quite incredible.
Oh no, he really turned a lot of those girls. I mean, everyone talks about Daniela Riff coming out of nowhere. Go back to Seoul, Korea, 2009, where she comes from behind. You know, it was Emma Moffitt was dominating at that time. You know, in 08, 09, she kind of
she won a number of world titles there. Yeah,
quite a few. And Daniela comes. That was kind of her first breakthrough race that I can recall. She may have more, but.
No, that was one I remember that.
I remember watching that. I wasn't at that race, but I remember watching that and going, wow, that was amazing.
Yeah.
This she has talent. She just hasn't been able to use it in that kind of racing, of like what you talk.
In a couple of weeks, we get to talk to her.
I know. We're going to break it down. We'll hear the story right from her mouth.
Yeah, but then going back to what I was saying, so there was the, you know, Siri Lindley, Darren Smith, and then Sarah True went to Joel Filial, who is now dominating the World Series.
He's done phenomenal.
You know, with Katie Zafaris and Vincent Lewis and Mario Mola, all world champions. He's just producing this plethora of people. And
it's funny knowing him from when we were back in Canada. He was a sports science guy and
quiet guy.
Yeah, coached his wife and maybe some other athletes at the time too, but very quietly spoken but has done so well.
Oh yeah.
And built so many phenomenal athletes.
And his episode was just brilliant. Just
yes.
You know, it's amazing when we first knew him living in Victoria, Canada, and Joel, like you said, he was this kind of quiet guy in the corner, and you didn't, you know, we had dinner with him all the time. Actually, we really enjoyed our dinners at that Japanese restaurant. And now bringing him on the show, and he's this still quietly spoken, but this confidence that he understands the process of getting athletes to greatness. And it was pretty cool. It's
quite a skill.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. And then now Sarah True is with another coach that's been on the show, Dan Lorang.
Done phenomenal with Jan And Sarah.
Well, what's incredible
honestly.
with Dan, he doesn't have a squad of triathletes. They're all coached remotely.
Yeah.
So he coaches Annie Hug and Jan Frodeno to, the 2019 Ironman World Championships, world records, the whole caboot, man and woman, first time ever done by the one coach.
Wow.
Somebody can tell me if that's not true, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
Coaches Sarah her first year of Ironman to fourth at Kona. And then, if you listen to Sarah's episode, she's had a few health issues since. But so I look at Sarah and go, wow, she dialed in 4 tremendous coaches over
definitely.
her 20-year career.
She'll have to leave the sport going, I've tried everything. I've done everything I can in this sport to be the best I can.
Well, if you think of it as
you never finish feeling like, I've done everything.
No.
But she has to kind of feel a little bit of comfort in knowing that she could not be schooled any.
No. Well, it's like she's got 4 degrees, one from Oxford, one from Cambridge, one from Harvard, and one from Princeton.
Yeah. What more do you want? Yeah. I know, it's true.
Let's move on a little bit and talk about what we've seen in terms of equipment changes in the sport. We can go back to the 80s, and I remember when those Scott DH aero bars came out and the profile design, they used to call them pram pushers because they look like you're pushing a pram.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the clipless pedals, they call them clipless, but they were actually
clip in.
It never made sense to me.
No, it doesn't make sense.
But they were basically ski binders, came along and we clipped our feet in.
Exactly.
And it didn't have to reach down to do the toe straps. Did you ever do toe straps?
I did have that. Yes.
Wasn't that hard?
It's almost more dangerous.
It's way more dangerous. You go down, every time you go to a stoplight, you have to reach down and unclip.
Scary at best.
Yeah, and then all the wheels and everything. But now you haven't tried a new pair of those running shoes, have you?
No, I haven't run in about 2.5 years.
No, you haven't run at all, have you?
Actually, 4 years.
Well, during the 4 years of you not running,
things have evolved.
There's been quite an advancement in shoe technology.
No, I have seen.
Yeah.
I have seen, but no, I have not worn.
I just tried them on and ran down a hallway once, and I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. There was talk of that happening, and it's finally come true.
Yeah.
The
spring-loaded.
Carbon spring-loaded shoe. Yeah. I mean, it's exciting because people are running faster. It's just similar to the swimming, where they
did the speed suits, and then they got rid of them.
You're ruining the sport because now... But some of the people have come and broken the records with the speed suits.
Without wearing the speed suits?
Without wearing them.
Isn't that amazing?
And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, that athletes, I think they rise to the level they need to rise to be successful. If there's a level there that they feel, they're doing everything they can and they're in that group, then they kind of feel, almost complacent and they're just taking it along.
But what about the ones that create the new level? The Alistair Brownlee, Javier Gomez before him, now Jan Frodeno on the men. I'm talking on the men, but you talk about Daniela Riff for the women at the Ironman. Or the Flora Duffy. We haven't mentioned Flora. What she did for the sport was the ability to swim, bike, and run.
Well, she's one that goes into yet a different category.
Yeah.
Like we were saying, where she can do all 3 events, and she was dictating the pace for all 3 events.
All 3.
So it's one as an athlete to be able to do all 3, and you're hanging on to somebody who's, a better swimmer, or a better biker, or better runner kind of thing. But she had all 3.
She could lead out of the water, do the fastest bike, and still drop a run that was fastest, or top 2 or 3 or whatever. I mean, it was.
Where is she? That's what I mean. I don't know because nobody's racing.
Well, I'm from looking at her Instagram. She's getting herself fit, and
good.
I think.
That's the thing. Like, unless we're really tracking their Instagram and knowing exactly what they're up to, I think it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah,
come race day, the Olympics.
It's going to be so great. Whoever wins, we got to get on this show right away.
Right away.
So I'm gonna have to reach out to everybody. Anybody listening to us that is racing the Olympics and you do happen to win, understand we are your first interview.
Please.
I know, I'm such a groupie. That's so great. I mean, even things like a sponsor of the show, this Form Swim goggles.
Yeah.
They're just,
exactly.
I'm going to have Dan on the show who invented the Form Swim goggles, and because it just blows my mind, the technology that you can have.
It would have been really handy to have when we were living in Vic and doing so much open water swimming in those lakes, which was so beautiful. But you had no measure of, where you're at.
Fetus Lake out around the island. Remember that? We always, 1,500 meters. Well, now actually we could actually tell you how far it is.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
We were like, and then the Fetus Lake.
No, it would have been beautiful because it was so nice to swim out there, but you kind of felt like, oh, am I wasting a swim? Or you just use those swims as recovery swims or just your quote unquote long swim day. But
there's nothing more specific. I mean, that's the thing.
No, it's true.
If you can get in the open water, it's so specific. No flip turns or anything.
Yeah.
But now we can actually use it and go, you can either do it to heart rate. You could actually do fartlek workouts, which is my favorite, which means, change your pace. Mm-hmm. I love that kind of workout. And so you can go, rather than I used to always count 100 strokes, 100 on, 50 off or something like that. Now you can just go, go for 200 meters or hold the heart rate for 2 minutes at this. You could do so much more. Yeah. And then you can download it, analyze it, share it with your coach or whatever.
Yep. Perfect.
Not that you need data for everything. Sometimes you do need to just go and enjoy it.
There's no reason you can't. Well, the thing is I think the data helps you with your sense of feel. Some people don't have any sense of feel. So data for them is super important. But if you have a sense of feel and you feel like, okay, I feel like I'm swimming 110 pace, and then you get that feedback that it is, well, now you can dial in exactly, that feel and you can know it better.
Yeah.
And that's why I always love data. Some people get too emotional with data and it freaks them out. Like, oh my God, I thought it was 110 and now it's 112 and and so, okay, those people, maybe just give the numbers to your coach and then he can kind of.
Well, that's the thing I've noticed with these goggles is you actually don't see the numbers. It is so bizarre to me. Like you do see them. My point is when you're swimming, you're looking past.
Yeah.
But then you have to go.
You can still relax.
Well, how far have I swum? You go, oh, let me look at my goggle lens, which is right in front of your eye. It is so bizarre.
Actually, that's kind of nice, though.
You kind of, you look way beyond it, and then you go, actually, what am I doing? Or you could just really not really look at it and just download, I said.
You can relax. Mm-hmm. You can still have the option of relaxing if you don't want to be looking at it the whole time. Yeah. That's really nice. That's probably well detailed by them.
No, it is. It's absolutely amazing. I just how they understand how the eye works. Just because I thought, I don't want to look at a number the whole time.
Yeah,
but you don't notice it. What about recovery? I mean,
how that's changed.
I know. Well, you and I've talked about on the show what we had.
You mean buying bags of ice and throwing them in the bathtub? Is there something else?
Oh no. Well, we had Marcus Mejias, our massage therapist, or Duncan Crosby down in Noosa, and our chiropractors, Alex Keith. I've mentioned all of them on the show numerous times, but basically you and I always had training done by 1 or 2 in the afternoon most days, and then we'd have body work done and need our team of people.
Yeah. I think I got a massage from Marcos every day in 2012.
You did, leading up to the games?
I think so. There was a couple of years. I mean, there's a lot of years I was injured, but a couple of those where I just had to, get through it.
Yeah, well, strength was always a thing that you needed to keep working on. On that, what do you think's been the craziest, biggest day you've ever done in training? Have you got one that stands out?
Well, definitely the most volume was when I was trying to do some of the Ironman stuff.
Oh, towards the end there.
Towards the end.
Yeah.
And I think there's out here in Boulder,
Left-hand canyon.
Yeah, left-hand canyon.
That, yes.
I did.
You're pointing at it. That's how I knew what she was talking about, people.
Left hand. Can't even remember the names anymore. Yeah. Brain damage caused by too much training. But yeah, I think it's about a 15-mile climb. It's probably 17 if you do the really steep part, but I would turn around at 15 mile. And
which is how far? Let's say in kilometers. That's 24 kilometers. Yeah.
24 kilometers. And I think I did one day three repeats of that, 3.5. Try to get ready. Yeah. I figure going up a hill is going to make, yes, coming down, you got to have that advantage. But
so you do 24K up.
Yeah.
Come down the bottom, 24K climb again.
So what is that?
No, it's about,
so about 100.
So left hand goes between about 4 and 8%, I think.
Yeah.
The whole time. So it's a fairly steady climb. It's not too steep, but you could really, did you do that in your aero bars or did you?
Yeah.
You did it?
Yeah. I had to get ready for Ironman.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Be 4-5 hours in a aero position.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you would do, I guess a round trip then is 48 kilometers, almost 50 kilometers or 30 miles. And then you did that 3.5 times. So yeah, you get your 180K in.
Yeah, that was my long ride.
And then you get off and go for a run, right?
Yeah. I can't remember how much I ran off it. Maybe only about 20K, but I'm pretty sure.
Only about 20K. Isn't it funny?
I'm pretty sure that was when I got injured. When I peaked on one of those times. But anyway, yeah.
Isn't it fun though to sometimes look back at those extreme days that we did?
No idea.
I mean,
I don't even think I can run 5K right now.
No, well, I've said it on the show numerous times that I get my 40 minutes in the morning, and 5 to 8K, so maybe 5 miles is my absolute
max.
And it's hard. I mean, I still feel every now and then I have glimpses, especially if I'm visualizing Jan Frodeno chasing me or Alistair Brownlee chasing me. I'm like, I still got this.
Where are those guys?
I'm running probably, yeah.
What's your craziest big day? Well, it could be big or hardest, I suppose.
Yeah, I think there was, I think I overdid it for most of my career. Yeah. So I mean, it's hard to pick
your
one.
Soto years for sure.
Well, Soto, no, I actually think when we coached ourselves, I think I did a lot of backing up. I mean, our Tuesday long day running, I decided when we would put our training program together, I decided firstly running was the priority because I believe the fitness crossed over well to the swim and the bike.
Yeah, but I also thought like two hours on your legs.
So we made 2 hours every Tuesday, and it was done best average pace, and so that was always every Tuesday I'd run 32 kilometers or 20 miles or more. Quite often do a recovery run in the afternoon to add it, take it up to 40 kilometers. Doing that, and those kind of runs, when you do them well, would really beat you up. But it also meant I always felt like I could sprint a 10K.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
If I could hold under 6-minute mile pace for 2 hours, it certainly made running under 5-minute pace for 30 minutes off the bike feel much more doable.
Yeah.
And that's off the Arthur Lydiard type of model of training that we did. Mm-hmm. I had Ryan Bolton on the show, coach, who's an old friend of yours too. And we talked about you, and he's doing a fantastic job coaching right now. Ben Hoffman, Sam Long, who's just stepped up incredible, Heather Jackson, who's been on the show.
Yeah.
And he's, we discussed that, and we kind of had a bit of a laugh because it is that kind of Arthur Lydiard, pretty strong volume, done well. It's not just outside doodling around. It's doing volume, but doing it well. And I think Ryan's doing that very, very well. But I think there's also been, when I tried my hand at Ironman again, like you towards the end, I think I did a couple of big days and weeks back to back. I kind of laugh. I remember Tuesday we would do the long run. Wednesday I would do the long ride with everybody here in Boulder, which I think was a bit of a waste of time, to be honest.
Very social.
It was social. We'd do the 180, 200K type rides, but
stop halfway.
Yeah. Having a Mars bar and a Coke it was fun and it was epic, I guess, but I didn't ever feel like it was that hard. Yeah. But then Thursday I'd get up and go, right, well, I'll do a 100K time trial in the morning. And that would be basically firm warm up for 10 kilometers, then hold a hard 90K finish at home.
Makes more sense.
Go straight to swim squad, we go down and swim a hard 4 kilometers. And then meet at Whole Foods for lunch. Be, Tim O'Donnell, Crowe, us, and then I'd say, okay, let's go up to the Switzerland Trail, and we go run, 25 kilometers or whatever it was up at 9,000 feet and big hills. And that would be a Thursday, it was just, but that was on the back of the Wednesday and the Tuesday. And you look back and you're, wow, too much probably. I mean, we all went rubbish that year. That was 2012. We all fell apart.
I think I ran into Dave Scott on pool deck one day, and he's like, 200K ride that close to Kona. Yeah. Not a good idea, guys.
Yeah.
But that's okay. You got to live and learn.
But you know what? Now, 10 years later, we're still telling the story. It must have been worth something.
That's right. You got a story out of it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were talking recovery. I don't know how we got...
Yeah.
But, this Hyper Ice, I just can't... I mean, they're a fantastic supporter of the show, but their products...
Yeah, it's great.
Honestly, what a lifesaver.
Massaging?
Just to have those massage tools on my hips when I go running, or the vibrating massage roller.
And a lot of it is just warming those muscles up before you put all of your weight into it.
Yeah.
It's so important. I don't think people really understand that. They have so much, well, yeah, I definitely didn't because I was injured so much, but I think it's just more the, having the opportunity of a simple massager before you run out the door.
Just take it with
get
you.
some blood in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly. They've made such a small one. You'd almost be running with it. No, not necessary.
Well, they do have that the Hypervolt Go, which is tiny, which you can take on the plane and everything. Which,
that's nice.
When you think of your long haul flights, you remember we always had those TP massage balls and little bits and pieces, but now you can actually bring something that can actually be giving a bit of a vibration and a bit of percussion.
Creating
I think
the
is
heat.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, look, I had basically looked at this episode as us sort of bringing you on as a co-host. People can hear you and everything else. I had thought we'd, talk a lot about health and wellness and longevity, but I think we've focused pretty heavily on the sport and triathlon, and that's our passion and our love and our life that we both led. And I think what we can do is keep another episode later on, maybe in 2 to 3 months, where it's just the two of us again, and we'll focus on sort of our general health and longevity. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
But
I think this is a pretty good place to finish it, to be honest. I think we've covered a lot. I do have a lot of fun questions that I have here, but I think it this gives everybody a nice taste of how Laura and I hope to do this show together going forward. And we now have our studio here in Boulder, where we also hope to have guests come and sit with us. I'm trying to get Timothy O'Donnell in. He wants to bring a bottle of wine, so that'll be an interesting episode.
Very interesting.
But everybody, Laura, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, you're a co-host now, so thanks for having me.
That's true. That's true. I'm excited.
I hope going forward we get to have you, especially bringing the woman's perspective. I think it's great to have that story, and so I think it's going to be fun going forward.
Love feedback if people are interested.
Yeah,
some feedback.
Absolutely, it's the only way we improve.
Yeah.
Please let us know.
Please.
We want to make this show great, and we want to make it great for you, the listener. So tell us what you want. All right. Let's wrap it up. Thanks, everybody, for listening. For all the show notes and timestamps and links and all the coupon codes for the sponsors, you can go to bennettendurance.com/media. All right. Take it easy.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks a lot for listening to Be With Champions. If you enjoyed the show, your support would truly be appreciated. You can visit the Be With Champions Patreon page, or you can subscribe with your podcast app of choice. Don't miss the next episode, so subscribe and be notified. For show notes, if you want to know more, please visit bennettendurance.com. I'm Phil Liggett, and on behalf of Greg Bennett, here's to the next time, and I hope you will join Greg again very soon.